Hello from Idaho. Gonna take a little trip up to Ola, Idaho. It's beautiful like the rest of Idaho. Pretty good 2-lane road. It's July 5th, so we still may have Independence Day traffic. This is my first riding video, so you should put in the comments all the things that I'm screwing up. The Indian Scout is on the sporty side of tourers, or I mean cruisers. It's got a healthy motor, an extremely rigid frame because it's made of cast aluminum parts, and they just do not give. So they hold the frame in alignment. The Scout's got huge contact patches on the tires, and so it sticks really well. In fact, so well that you can drag it pretty much anytime you want. One of my only grievances with the Scout is that it is low, and they make one that's even lower called the bobber. But even the standard, it's pretty easy to drag. I got a higher pipe on mine, so that helped a little bit. But in one of my future videos, you'll see that I have actually raised it as much as reasonably possible, and now I haven't touched it down in any kind of corner, and it was really fairly easy. I'm really liking the suspension changes. It really rides well, and doesn't bottom out so far, at least on the worst of bumps or speed bumps. And so if you start at the beginning, I started riding in 1960 on a 1949 Cushman scooter with a 5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton. 58, and it didn't run. It was in fairly good shape otherwise. It needed some electrical work, and the paint was pretty bad. It was kind of a weird pink color. So my dad and my uncle managed to rebuild the motor and get it running, and it was my brother and I's first motorcycle, or two-wheel powered vehicle, if you will. We painted it red with a brush, and I got the electronics working. I've always been into electronics, and automotive electronics is pretty simple. And so we got headlight, stoplight. There were no turn signals or anything else, but we did get all that working. And then we rode the dickens out of it until I was, I don't know, 14, and was old enough to get a motorcycle permit. We took it down to DMV, and they said, no way, it goes too fast, it's too heavy, and it doesn't stop fast enough. So at that point, I got a Honda 90 trail bike, and for a little while my brother and I both rode that together, individually and in tandem. And then I got my first motorcycle that was solely mine, even though my parents paid for it. I was about 16 at the time, and it was a new Kawasaki Bushwhacker 120, which was a dual purpose bike. It came with knobbies and whatnot, but it also had a headlight and a stoplight. Well, since that time, I've had a whole bunch of motorcycles that you can probably imagine. I also put myself through college, engineering school, bachelor's and a master's program working in a bike shop. We sold Kawasaki's and Suzuki's, Montesa, Penton, Triumph, I can't remember what else, Husqvarna, and the bike shop would work on anything. We worked on Harleys and Hondas and pretty much anything. The Scout lug's pretty good. I don't pull it down low. It's got a really short stroke. It's a very modern. You would swear that it was a Japanese motor and transmission because of the way it works and because of the way it looks. It's a 1133cc V-twin. It's a 45-degree twin instead of or I'm sorry, it's a 60-degree twin instead of the 45 like Harley. Dual overhead cams with 4 valves per cylinder. From the factory, it makes 100 horsepower, and that's about 88 or 85, something like that, the dyno sheets that I've seen, to the rear wheel. Being an engineer, I can never leave well enough alone, so I did a few weeks worth of research and found the very best performance intake. It's made by a company called Zippers. They make a lot of performance stuff, exhaust too, but it has a built-in velocity stack inside the part that directs air into the throttle body, and it has a nice K&N filter, and so it the Bassini added, from the dyno sheets I've seen, somewhere between 17 and 20 horsepower. We've got over 100 to the wheel now. That does require, the intake does require a fuel tune. So I went to a company called Fuel Moto, and they have the PV3 tuner. And they don't just sell you a tuner, they actually sell you tunes. And so you tell them what kind of bike you have and what you've done to it, and they will send you a tune that will be very, very good for your bike. And then if you notice something, well, then they'll send you another tune. If you can describe to them what the problem is, the Indian engine control unit, ECU, logs a bunch of performance parameters all the time it's running. It is a closed loop system, which means that it looks at the O2 sensors, decides whether you're rich or lean, and changes the fuel a whole bunch of times per second. But it does have a basic map someplace that it starts, and that's the part that you can adjust with the Fuel Moto, with the PV3. At any rate, I've gotten a couple tunes from, I guess I've gotten 3 tunes from Fuel Moto, and this thing is running flawlessly. It's a handful when you aren't hanging on tight. It's not super fast like a sport bike, but it runs mid 11 quarters, second quarters, better than that with a good rider. It launches pretty hard. It's got a good clutch. Anyway, that's one of the reasons I like the Scout, is that my Sportster, I was about to spend $3,000 on it to get it up to 100 horsepower. That was a big bore kit, cylinder head, CNC work, fuel tuning, and that was over and above what I'd already done, which is a stage 1 intake and exhaust. And so I started looking at the Scout in 2015 when it first came out, the modern rendition of Scout made by Polaris. Polaris has got a huge design company. They do, of course, they were famous for snowmobiles for forever, and they still make one of the best. And they make side-by-sides and, you know, work side-by-sides and play side-by-sides. And then they were making Victory motorcycles, and then they bought the rights to Indian, and for a while the Victory and the Indian shared a lot of parts. Anyway, they decided that the Indian was the more viable in the market, and they closed the Victory portion of the company and kept on making Scouts. At any rate, they started making this version of the Scout in 2015, and it's survived pretty much unchanged. It's had suspension changes in the back and in the front, and a few minor things, but for the most part, it's the same bike as in 2015. It's water-cooled, has a 6-speed transmission that makes you think you're on a Japanese bike. It's not like riding a Harley, which is more like shifting a tractor. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Buy American guy, and I've had a Harley for over a decade, and it served me well. I never had any problems from it. It took me all over the country. Anyway, back to the Scout. I started watching the Scouts because of their motor and the positive ride reviews and whatnot from just about everybody. And so, but they were expensive. They're, to me, a regular Scout was about 11 or 12,000 bucks. The Scout 60, which I didn't want, was under 10, right under 10. So, like I always do, I started watching the used market. And in 2019, I found this bike. It's actually a 2018 model that had, it was 11 months old, it had 4,000 miles on it. It rolled over to 4,000 when I was doing my test ride. It belonged to an 80-year-old gentleman that had 5 motorcycles, rode every day, but he didn't have room in his garage for 5, so he kept the Ducati and some of the others, and he offered this one for sale, and I got a smoking deal on it, about 3,000 bucks less than it was actually worth. For some reason, it was on Facebook Marketplace for a long time. I looked at it for quite a while, but the asking price was pretty high. Actually, it was fairly reasonable. The asking price was fairly reasonable, but it was still a high number for me. So anyway, one day I decided, what the hell, I'll go over and look at it at least. And the guy brought it out. He started up his BMW Adventure touring bike, and we went on like a 60-mile test ride back in the hills up above Boise. A lot of 2-lane curvy stuff. So I did my normal used bike buying. His lawn is kempt, his cars are taken care of. If he's got maintenance records, he knows about oil changes and does them. Then I will then start looking at the bike or the lawnmower or the motor car or whatever that I'm buying. So I bought this motorcycle, and it was bare bones. It had a little bikini type windshield on it. Like I said, it had 4,000 miles on it, and it was stock. There were no mechanical changes. The guy had the maintenance records. It had been into the dealer for service at the appropriate time. And so after the test ride, I started talking to him about price. I reminded him that it had already been on Facebook Marketplace for 8 or 9 weeks. And it was getting to be late in the riding year. So he gave it to me for a really good price. I put it on my trailer, which I took with me. I always do that whenever I'm going to look at something that needs hauled. And shook the gentleman's hand, gave him a personal check, and I've been enjoying the dickens out of it ever since. I'll put a as purchased picture in the video here somewhere. The original had the tan seat and passenger pillion on it. And as much as I love Scout, I do not understand the tan leather. A lot of people really embrace it. They get tan bags and tan handlebar bags and tan tank bags, and they put fringe on the thing and the faces of Indian warriors all over the place. But that's not me. So I first thing I did was dye the seat black. I used to work a little leather, and so I went down to Tandy and got me some leather scrubber and jet black dye and some sealant, and I changed the color of the seat, so then it had black leather on it. Since then, I put on a Mustang seat. For most people, stock cruiser seats are pretty bad for long distance. If you just go to the local bar or ride around on cruise nights, the stock seat is great. So, but after 150 miles, my butt hurts, so I bought a Mustang seat. I would rather have had a Corbin, but at the time I was looking for used seats, I couldn't find a Mustang or a Corbin, so I ended up buying a used Mustang, and I like it very much. It's not as pretty, as stylish as the factory seat, and clearly inferior to the styling of the Corbin, but it does allow you to ride long distances even when you're old like me. I just turned 71 in May. I'm very lucky in that I sat on my butt and typed for most of my life after I got an engineering degree, so my body's not all beat up, and so I can still hunt and hike and shoot competitively and ride motorcycles and do those kinds of things. The next change I made to the Scout was obviously stage 1 intake and exhaust. We've already talked about the Zipper and the Bassani. I really like both of those. They're American companies. Their stuff is designed here. Their stuff is built here. They actually ride every day. And so they understand what works and what doesn't work. There's a lot of people changing to intake systems on the Scout that are actually buying an inferior product because they don't know how airflow works. And they do make an improvement over the stock airbox. All stock airboxes are convoluted messes due to the EPA. This thing got about, I don't know, 25 times louder in intake noise with the Zipper, but it makes a big difference in performance. I actually have a sort of a impromptu dyno that I use to tell if my changes are making a difference. I hope to make a video on that. I'm talking about all the changes, but the reason I went ahead and made those changes is because the basic motorcycle is so incredibly sound. There are people with over 100,000 miles on them, people that ride 20,000 miles a year. So the other change that I've made to the Scout is I've put in a USB charger. There's a kit that you can buy from Scout. This is the 2018, so it didn't come with it. Later models do come with it, except on the Scout 60. So I put in my own. I just put it in the factory location. You may be able to see the flip-up weatherproof cap. Try not to run off the road here while I'm showing you. So I can charge my phone, which I don't really use on the bike, but I do have a GPS, a dedicated motorcycle GPS that's waterproof, that mounts on these little round ram balls. One's for the GPS, the other one's for a GoPro that I don't yet own. if this moto vlogging thing turns out to be something that I really like, I'll probably get another camera and fix it on that little ram mount. I've also bought a National Cycle Plexi Fairing 3. I don't like riding behind a fairing because on the kind of roads that we have, 6 inches in tire path can make the difference between going down and staying up. And if you can't see the road for 20 or 30 feet in front of you because it's blocked by a fairing, a non-transparent fairing, then you're at a real disadvantage when you're trying to thread your way through sand or gravel or dead animals or whatever on the road. So I won't have a fairing. I learned this lesson while I was working in the bike shop and nearly went down on a customer's GS 1000. And so I bought the next best thing, which is a windshield that's curved and formed like a fairing. And so it comes up around over the hand guards and it seals to the headlight, and then it's shaped like a fairing, but it's clear. And I like it very much. It's quick on and off. I don't use it in the summer unless I'm going on a trip where I can't control the weather. It does help with fatigue if you're on a 600-mile day or whatever. But for the most part, I don't use it in the summer. But like I say, it's quick on and quick off. And I like it very much. The Indian bags are ugly as sin. They look like the side of a Conestoga wagon. No offense to those that love them. It's all personal preference, but it isn't mine. I would really like the Indian hard bags. Are beautiful, but you know, they're the quarter of the price of the motorcycle, so I'm not going to do that. I had Viking bags on the Sportster. They worked great for a decade or more, and so I put Viking bags on, but I insist on all my accessories being quick on and quick off. Well, for the Sportster, I handmade quick on and quick off brackets. And I didn't actually know about easy brackets at that time. If I had, I like fabrication, but I don't generally fabricate things that I can already buy. We used easy brackets on the Scout. They lock on. They do come on and off in about 15 seconds, probably 15 seconds aside. When they come off, there's no ugly pieces left on the bike, and so I keep them on most of the time because I have a good selection of tools in the saddlebag. In fact, I carry more tools than most people have in their garage. But I hate being broke down. Knock on wood, I've been carrying those tools for 60 years in all my riding, tailoring them to each bike. And I only use them to work on other people's stuff, which is fine with me. Viking bags makes a dozen or more different flavors of bike. You can buy them with the buckles and the little silver stamped stars and whatever. Anyway, the ultimate model a lot of space in them. I'm not sure whether they'll work with the stock exhaust, but they work great with my Bassani. And so I enjoy them very much. They keep out the water. So when I fixed the suspension on the Scout, I went to longer shocks in the back. 12 3/8 is about the longest shock you can put on the back without having the swing arm come down and hit the frame. And I contemplated cutting the frame out. Some people do that. They make off-road kind of bikes out of the Scout. They make hill climb bikes and flat track bikes and whatnot. and they just cut that little piece of frame out of there. It doesn't really do much of anything, but I decided to keep it and just put on longer shocks. So I got 1.2 inches taller in the back, and then I added air fork caps to the stock Scout suspension, and with 15 psi the bike is level again. I'm partway through doing a video of that particular modification. When I talk about it on any of the Facebook or Indian forums, everybody tells me I'm nuts because they like the look of a low bike. In fact, a lot of people are asking, how do I lower it? Basically, they're asking, how do I make it more worthless? But if your sense is style over function, why, more power to you. That's not me. I'm function over style. I like style. I like things that look great, but they have to look and perform well at the same time. It's easy to do one or the other, but I like both. Oh, I see something called a cafe. And there's a bike here. Maybe it's open. Muley's. All right, it looks like Muley's is where we're going to eat. Yay. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of a walkthrough before I find some food. So here's my Scout, 2018 regular Scout, 1133 cc's. Here's the Viking bags. If you look at it from this side, you can see that the bag very nearly, actually it's closed a little bit funny, but the bag matches the curvature of the fender, and it clears the pipe in the suspension. Here's the easy on and off brackets with a key. I've added tie down points to the front and the back of the brackets. I got a luggage rack and a Indian Scout tail bag. That's where I keep my on-road stuff mostly. A hat and some other things. You can see my bar end mirrors better here. There's the Bassani exhaust. I like it because it's true equal length headers. If you look at racing engines, every exhaust tube is the exact same length back to the collector. This makes each cylinder work exactly the same. So it's easier to tune. You don't have one that's lean and one that's rich because they're the same and you can tune them. And Bassani does that on all their pipes. You can see my custom driving light brackets. Those aren't wired up yet, but I like the look of that it presents to oncoming riders. When I was looking for a windshield, I found a Plexifairing 3, and it had an opening for a 7-inch headlight. Well, I really like 7-inch headlights anyway, so I put a 7-inch headlight on it and a SunPie LED headlight, and it has a LED headlight modulator to help people see the motorcycle instead of turning left in front of you. And so that's kind of what is there. I haven't changed that much. It's got a mud flap on it to keep stones and whatnot out of the radiator. I've put a little quick shift lever arm there on the transmission. It makes it shift a little bit quicker. Other than that, the pegs and everything are stock. I've cut some recesses in the pulley cover. And even though I'm Mr. Function, these are entirely looks. I happen to like that look. If you've got a bobber, well, you also have this cutout all the way down your pulley guard, and it actually looks even better. I sometimes go through drive-ins on this bike, and there's just no place to put a drink, and I don't drink going down the road, but for going through drive-ins, I put this little bicycle beverage holder and hooked it to the two bolts that the two bolt holes that normally would hold on a passenger foot peg. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, and I do love it. There isn't any motorcycle on the market that I would rather have. I've never been into Barco-Lounger bikes. I rode a bunch of them when I was in the motorcycle shop, when they'd come in for tunes or road repairs or whatever. I've just never been into them, and I told you about my issue with fairings that you can't see through. It keeps you from seeing the road 20 feet or more in front of you. That's not a good thing on a motorcycle in our kind of roads. So anyway, I'm going to stop jabbering, go eat. As usual, if you like or dislike my video, please select the appropriate button and let me know why. I really appreciate comments, and I will answer every one. If you're new to my videos, please select the subscribe and the notification bell to get more videos like this.